In 1525, during the waning years of the Ming Dynasty, China teetered on the brink of collapse. Emperor Jiajing's detachment from governance left the empire fractured, with corruption and unrest spreading. Even the Shaolin Monastery, high on Mount Song, felt the tremors of turmoil. Here, amidst ancient stone and bamboo groves, monks trained rigorously, blending martial discipline with spiritual wisdom. For young monks like Jin, the path was not merely about mastering forms, but understanding the nature of power itself. As dawn broke over the mountain, Jin practiced alone in the courtyard, inhaling the earthy scent of damp bamboo. Each strike sliced through the air, his limbs aching from exertion. He pressed harder, trying to break an invisible barrier. His fingers brushed the small amulet around his neck, a family heirloom. If I can just master the forms through sheer will, he thought, then I will find the strength I seek. Yet his victories felt hollow, as though he had been fighting against the world. High above, Elder Li Yuan watched, his gaze steady. He had seen countless students like Jin, mistaking unyielding force for resilience. He fights like an oak in a storm, Li Yuan thought. Strong but too rigid. Descending the stone steps, he approached Jin, who halted his movements and bowed respectfully. "Master," Jin said, "I am ready for today's training." Li Yuan held his gaze, a look of quiet understanding in his eyes. "Come, Jin," he said, motioning for the young monk to follow. "Let us walk." They walked through a forest of bamboo, the slender stalks swaying in the breeze. Stopping beside a tall stalk, Li Yuan bent it slightly and released it, watching it spring back, unharmed. "The bamboo bends but does not break," Li Yuan said. "It does not yield because it is weak, but because it understands that the wind is not its true enemy." Rigidity is the real threat. He turned to Jin, his voice carrying years of wisdom. Strength is not found in resisting every force. It is found in knowing when to yield. Jin's brow furrowed. How can yielding be a source of strength, master? Li Yuan's gaze drifted to a nearby stream. "Come," he said, guiding Jin to the water's edge. "Tell me what you see." Jin knelt, watching as the water slipped around rocks and branches. "The stream flows around the stones," he observed, continuing on its path, yielding to every obstacle yet moving unhindered. Li Yuan nodded. Water does not resist, yet it wears away even the hardest stone. To yield is not to surrender, it is to adapt. The days that followed saw Jin return to his training with a different intent. Before each session, he placed his staff carefully on the ground and touched the amulet around his neck, seeking not just strength, but understanding. He softened his movements, letting the rhythm of the forms guide him. Frustration welled up within him, old habits clinging stubbornly. Yet in quiet moments, he noticed nature's wisdom, moss growing on stones, yielding yet thriving, a flower bending under a raindrop, only to rise again. "Strength is knowing when to yield," he whispered. One morning, Li Yuan presented him with a task. "Take this bucket," he said, "and fetch water from the mountain spring. Return with it full, and let not a drop spill." The path was steep and slick from rain. As Jin filled the bucket and began his descent, the water's weight tugged at him. The more he tried to hold it steady, the more it resisted. His thoughts drifted to the stream's flow around obstacles. Taking a deep breath, he loosened his grip, letting his steps follow the path's natural contours. News came of bandits threatening a nearby village. The monks prepared to defend the villagers, and Jin joined them, his heart filled with anticipation and resolve. The clash of steel and cries of battle filled the air. At first, Jin fought rigidly, his staff cutting through the air with force. But his rigid strikes left him vulnerable. In that moment, the world slowed. He saw not only the threat, but the space where he could move, where yielding could be his shield. He stepped aside, his staff redirecting the attack like a reed bending with the wind. When the battle ended, the bandits retreated, and the villagers were safe. Jin stood amidst the fallen leaves, his breath steady, his heart lighter. Yielding, he now understood, was not weakness. It was the strength to endure without breaking, to adapt in the face of the storm. In the weeks that followed, Jin's movements grew more natural, his practice no longer about mastery, but understanding. The mist that once shrouded the mountain lifted with each dawn, revealing a world shaped by wind, water, and resilience. Jin continued, each step carrying him forward along the way of yielding.